Story time, Tinder edition. Okay, the story blew up on Twitter like a while ago, but I'm just gonna retell it because it's very informational. So there was this guy and this girl, and they met through Tinder, and then they met up and they went on this date. And they were out at dinner, and then she starts not feeling so well. And then she says, I really need to go home. And he says, yeah, I'll drive you home. And she says, okay. So then they get to her house, and then she starts feeling better. So then she says, do you want to come in for some coffee? And then he says, yeah, sure. So they go inside, they have their coffee, and then she doesn't feel well again. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel well again. I think you really need to leave. And he's like, okay. And he leaves. And then she goes to bed, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up, and she hears this noise down in her kitchen. And so she locks her door, and she calls the cop. And the 911 operator is just on the other line saying, can you just stay on the line until the cops get there? And then the cops get there, and they're like, the door is locked. Like, we don't think anyone's inside. And she's like, I promise you, someone's inside my house. I can hear them. She says, you have my permission to break down the door. So she's still up in her room, and then she hears the cops break down the door. And then she hears some rustling and some fighting. Part 2 coming now. Part 2 of the Tinder story. So then after the cops break down the door, they go upstairs and they knock on her door, and they're like, it's okay, we've got the guy, everything's fine. And they say to her, we don't really want you to stay here tonight. We don't think that you should see what he's done. And when I say he, it's the guy that she went on a date with. And she's like, no, I need to see what he's done. So she goes downstairs and she sees her kitchen wrapped all in plastic, and there's a saw and a hammer and a knife. And earlier when he came into her house for coffee, he set his keys down right next to her keys. And so when he left, he picked up both sets of keys. And that is how he got back into her house. And they tested her, like her blood and everything, and she wasn't supposed to wake up because of how many drugs were in her system, because on the date he drugged her. And then I guess he was just planning on shopping.
Tell me a first date story when you realized they were not getting another date.
So, a few years ago, I matched with this girl on Tinder, right? Everything was cool, so we ended up hanging out. We went and got some food, and then we went back to my place, and we had a few drinks. And that's where things started getting good. And, you know, she's giving me the good old, but she's using way too much teeth. So, yeah, if you ever see this, lighten up on the teeth. And we do the whole nine, you know. It was cool. But afterwards, she falls asleep. And I go out to the living room just to watch TV because I'm not tired yet. I fell asleep on the couch, woke up the next morning. She was up getting ready because she had to leave. She had to go back to her house and get ready for work. So she leaves, whatever. I go back in the bedroom to lay down. I peeled back my motherfucking cover. Y'all, the bitch shit in my bed. So after I discovered the shit in my bed, I immediately bag up the sheets and get them out of my apartment. I'm spraying fucking Febreze. I don't have anything to like clean my bed, so I'm like using Dawn dish soap and paper towels. And yeah, I'm having a shitty morning. But you know, after that, I go back to the couch to lay down for a little bit. And a few hours later, she got the nerve to text me. Say, hey, I had a great time last night. I texted her back and say, hey, did you have an accident last night? She said, what do you mean? To which I responded, you shit in the bed. Crickets. I didn't hear from her for like 3 more days. To which she texted back, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Sorry, you're sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked her fucking number. And I buried this shit deep down and never spoke of it until...
I did want to share one more story today, and I want that to be my Tinder horror story. I've been meaning to post this forever because it's pretty good. So I matched with this really attractive dude on Tinder. I thought he was so cute, and we were texting for a while, and then we got to the point where we were like, hey, let's meet up. So we met up. We met at an outdoor mall and all that, hung out. Nothing really happened, nothing romantic, anything like that. He was acting kind of weird and then said that he had to go pretty fast, which I didn't understand because we were supposed to be hanging out all day and didn't end up doing that. And then right afterwards, I started getting ghosted, and I was like, what's going on? So I messaged one of my friends and was like, hey, this dude just started ghosting me. And he was like, what's his name? I told him his name. He was like, that's my old roommate, and he's married. I was like, there's absolutely no way. So I tried looking him up on Facebook. Turns out I was blocked. Right off the bat, he had blocked me, so I couldn't find out that he was married. So I used my secondary, found his account, found his wife, and I messaged her. If you want to see the messages, stay tuned, I guess. Part 2 to my Tinder horror story. So when I found her profile, this was the first thing I had said to her, and this was her response, and this is kind of where I laid it all out on the table, what was going on. We did have some back and forth right before this, kind of letting her know what was going on, and gave her all the proof, all the evidence. And then this was her saying that basically, like, yeah, this is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. And then he started denying everything, of course, because that's what they do. And then this is when I started to feel like garbage because she was not feeling good about it, but I wanted her to know. And then this was kind of the climax to the story. He said someone made a fake profile, kept denying it and all that. And then, yeah. After this, I found out that they were still together, but that quickly ended, and now she's in a happy relationship. Good for her.
Story time. So when I was going through one of my notorious hoe phases, I was on Tinder as per usual, and I was going to go hook up with this guy just for like a one night stand thing, nothing else. I told him that, like, whatever. So the first, I get there, and a lot shorter than I thought he was gonna be, which is, is fine, but he looked a lot different in his pictures. And we started doing things, and he turned over and looked at me, and with a straight face, he looked at me and was like, "Can you shove a thing up my booty hole?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't do that. I mean, like, go you. No judgment whatsoever, but that's a lot for the first time I'm meeting you, and I'm not ready for that." Like, for part 2 of Tinder hookup story, again, no judgment at all. Like, I'm a kinky bitch, and I like my stuff, but I was just not interested in doing that, mostly when I met him for the, first time. And, so whatever, I stayed for a little bit because the D game was kind of good, and it did the job that I needed it to do, so I stayed. And then after I left, he just kept blowing up my phone to hang out, and I told him from the get-go that it was just like a one-night thing, but he kept blowing up my phone. So I blocked and deleted him, and then maybe like a year goes by or whatever, literally haven't talked to the kid. I started this new job at a restaurant as a waitress, and who do I see at the bar on my first day? Tinder guy, because the motherfucker's a regular there, and is there almost every single day. Okay, last part, I swear, of the Tinder hookup story. So I see him on my first day of work, and I shit you not, every other time I see him there, he is with, his, big group of friends, and there's always, 8 of them, or, less than 8, or whatever. And every time I walk past the fucking table, they just... Every single fucking time I was getting made fun of from my coworkers and my managers. It was a funny story to share. But I'll never see him again because I don't work there anymore, hopefully. But if you want more stories, because I have plenty, please follow, and comment, and give me some ideas of what to post. Thank you.
I wasn't going to post this because the past 24 hours have been crazy, but now that I'm mulling over it, I will. I matched with somebody on Tinder. He was actually kind of cute, so we decided to meet up. Throughout the conversation, he was telling me how big his fallacy was. Then send me an unsolicited eggplant pic. And I was like, well, it's a regular size to me. It doesn't mean anything. Well, I met him anyway. And boy, was I surprised. 5 minutes before he showed up, he told me he had gained the quarantine weight, which is what everybody did. Actually, I lost, but I digress. He said he was a bodybuilder. He said he was broad and muscular. I think something was wrong with the scale because it was definitely more than 10 pounds. Weight is not an issue for me, so then we proceeded to hook up. Hard. It was 45 seconds of the worst sex I've ever had. I then had to use the code word, which I discussed in a previous TikTok. This was before I was about to blow his ass up. When I left, he said, I'm a nice guy. I now realize that was a total lie. For 5 days, he was MIA, and I was fine with that. He texted me last night saying MIA. I don't like ghosting. I don't ghost. but I'm brutally honest. So this is what I told him. I took the high road. Now see his reaction when I told him that. Check it out. Yeah, that happened. I was no longer Miss Nice Woman. He then proceeded to get this childish for the next hour, called me twice, and then told me to stop calling him.
I'm about to tell you about one of the scariest dates I have ever been on in my life. I don't normally do story times about dates on my page, but this one was genuinely so terrible that it has to be talked about. Also, like, trigger warning for topics related to SA. So I met this guy on Tinder, and we actually talked a lot back and forth before we decided to meet in person. He eventually asked me out, and we decided to meet at a bar that was close to where we both live. And y'all, when I tell you, I was so stoked when he showed up because he was just as attractive in person, if not more. We sit down, we order some drinks, and we're having such a good time. Like, this was legit one of the best dates that I had been on. Like, we literally talked for hours. We, like, shut the bar down. So at that point, it was genuinely going really great. Like, we had a ton in common, and one of the things I liked about him a lot is that he was a doctor. And yes, I confirm this online. I could find him on, like, healthgrades.com. And yeah, before you guys say anything about it, it's hot that he was a doctor. I'm that bitch. I like that responsible, educated energy. After the day, he was walking me back to my car and he asked me if I wanted to go back to his place. And to be honest, I kind of didn't want to initially because I actually was super into him and I thought that this might actually go somewhere. I thought I'd like try something new and like not go home with him on the first night. But then we got to talking and he was kind of like, you know, you're a little person and we've had a lot to drink. You probably shouldn't drive. He was like, you should just come back to my place. We can just watch a movie. You can sober up. He was like, no funny business, I promise. And so I decided, okay. But really I was like, okay. So we get into his car and we're driving, we're listening to music, everything is fine. And then there's kind of a lull in conversation. This man looks at me and says, if you had to choose, would you rather be raped or murdered? Y'all, when I tell you that like my entire body went cold. Like I felt like all of the hair was like standing up on the back of my neck. I didn't know what to say. So finally I just said, why would you ask me that? And he looks at me, smiles and says, it's a game. All of the things that were like running through my head at that moment, like I was thinking about my parents and like how upset that they would be if like this is how I went out. I started thinking about like how fast the car was moving and that like realistically I couldn't tuck and roll out of the car at like the speeds we were going. I saw that there was a light coming up in the distance and it was green, but we were kind of a ways away and I was familiar with the road. So I kind of thought, well, hopefully the car like gets there at the red light and then I can just run. Like I can just get out of the car and run. But then I thought, what if he has child locks on the car and I try to get out of the car and then he'll know that I was trying to escape. So I thought I would just try to like appease him for the rest of the ride. And I looked at him and I just said, oh, is this like a pick your own adventure? I'm about to run out of time, so follow and like for.
Is it time for another tale from Tinder? Yes, I think so. Got asked by this guy if I wanted to come over so that he and his roommates could gangbang me. He's like, don't worry, we'll wine and dine you first. Like, thank God, Chad. Because if there wasn't a charcuterie board, it was going to be a hard no from me. But you know, your girl can't resist a summer sausage. Maybe a nice brie.